Dear viewers, welcome to the story of how I flew into this fandom. Get comfy, because this one is a bit convoluted. My first encounter with Skylanders started the same as many others, at some other kid's house. See, my family was a part of a church group that got together every few weeks, and we'd go to a different family's house each time. I was in middle school, and not all that good with the whole socializing thing, so I often split away from the other kids to be on my own. We're at this family's house. Grown-ups are upstairs, kids are wandering all over, and I honestly just want to find somewhere quiet. Thankfully, this house had a downstairs that was nice and empty. So little me goes wandering off on my own, and that is when I saw it. I instantly started digging through the basket and pulled out every dragon I could find. I was too embarrassed to actually play with them, but I sure admired them for a while. It wasn't long till some other kids came downstairs, and the boy who lived at this house saw that I was looking through his Skylanders. Let me tell you, he was so excited to see someone interested. He instantly took me to his room and showed me this big poster on his wall and started explaining away, told me about different characters, who he wanted to get, and so forth. Then I went home and promptly forgot about it. I feel kinda bad looking back at it now, cause he was genuinely happy to share about the series he loved, and I really didn't care to listen. My ability to be considerate wasn't that good at the time, and my interest didn't go any further than liking how the dragons looked. So yeah, that's not how I got into Skylanders. I wouldn't even connect Skylanders to that moment with the kid until well after I was into the fandom myself, and kind of just looked back and realized, oh yeah, I did see that somewhere before now. The truth is, the majority of the Skylander craze bypassed me entirely. My family was great at limiting screen time in a fair way, so while we had video games and Netflix and such, we didn't have cable TV, and thus I never once saw commercial advertising the franchise. I enjoyed some games, most handheld ones on my DS or mobile games like Dragon Veil, but big console games were more my brother's thing. I just didn't come into contact with Skylanders. That is, until one day I was around 16 and I was browsing Netflix. At this point, I still enjoyed animated series, but was honestly kind of embarrassed that I liked animated series. I was picky with which ones I watched, but open to giving anything a try. And, lo and behold, I see something with a big purple dragon plastered across the front. Look, I'm a very simple girl. If you put a dragon on it, I am going to click on it. So I watched the first episode of Skylanders Academy. Yes, you heard that right. My introduction to Skylanders was through none other than the mediocre show that most of the fans choose to ignore. I have lots to say on the series because it was so close to being something really good, but definitely missed its potential. Maybe I'll do an episode-by-episode breakdown and review of it, and really get into where I think this story could have been really good, what it missed, what should it change, and so forth, because I have a lot I would love to explore on the topic. Let me know if that's something you guys want. In any case, I actually enjoyed the first episode a lot. The animation was nice, the story simple but well told, the characters were fun, and it had some genuinely funny moments. In fact, the only thing that really bothered me was the fact that they had Spyro hatch with a diaper on. That will never stop being one of the dumbest things I've witnessed in cartoon. But I digress. The show had me hooked well enough that once I finished that first season, I did want more. I really liked Stealth Elf in particular, and wanted more from her, because the series kind of underutilized her at that time. Actually, they underutilized her in general. But anyway, so after running out of episodes to watch, I did the natural next thing, which was to look up if there was any other Skylander content. And wouldn't you know it, yeah, there was just a bit of Skylanders content. Now, I liked this Netflix series and Netflix Stealth Elf, but as I started down the YouTube rabbit hole, I began to love the game version of Stealth Elf. I think we can all agree that the Skylanders in Academy aren't quite the same as their game counterparts, and Game Stealth Elf had something Academy Stealth Elf didn't, a mischievous aspect to her personality that made her a lot more compelling as an individual character. Academy is very much Spyro's story, and the other characters are shaped around that. But the games are notorious for actually not being Spyro-focused, and that means there was so much more to dive into. It didn't take me long to decide to get the first game to try it out myself. My brothers had an Xbox 360, and I had some money that I made by selling necklaces to tourists. I kept things simple and grabbed the starter pack and, naturally, Stealth Elf. I enjoyed it. Well, there's not much else for me to say. I enjoyed the game, but more importantly, I enjoyed getting to play the characters. See, the fun part of Skylanders to me was definitely in the individuals, their backstories and potential. Beating the games just wasn't that important to me. I dragged my sister into the franchise with me, and she had fun with it too. Her favorite was immediately Roller Brawl, a character that would become one of my favorites in the future. She was never as into it as I was, but liked it enough that I bought her a handful of the figures. We shared custody of Scratch. Now, for those who don't remember, Skylanders Academy came out alongside Imaginators. That meant I had a lot of content to catch up on, and no preference between the games and gimmicks. I'm pretty sure I bought Swap Force next because people on YouTube said it was good, and it was the game that would let my sister play her favorites. But I honestly don't remember for sure. I don't even remember when I ended up getting Trap Team, just that I have it and have played it. I definitely never finished playing it though. But I do know that I got Imaginators for Christmas along with some Senseis, and that was awesome because it let me play all the figures. I knew that Imaginators wasn't the best game, but the perks of being able to play all the characters was definitely worth it. I was deep enough at this point to be regularly watching Skylander YouTube videos, so I was getting lots of information about characters in the games that way, despite how little I actually played. I didn't play a lot simply because we only had a big TV in the middle of the living room to play it on, and demand for that TV was kind of split between my brothers with their very important Fortnite gameplay and Skyrim gameplay and, all the really important stuff. I can't fully describe how it happened, but of all the games, Superchargers was the one I loved the most, and it had nothing to do with the gameplay. For whatever reason, it was this collection of characters that really clicked for me. I loved them all. Well, most of them. The team included two of my favorites already, and the newer characters created an excellent dynamic between them all. It was essentially a good cast that I could use for a creative outlet. The comics also helped with that, and the little buzz quests that actually give them in-game dialogue are amazing. I don't know why people don't talk about that more.
Millipede, is that you? Ha! I haven't seen you since that secret soda operation we pulled off a while back.
Good times, Bart, good times.
What's funny is that I was never into cars and stuff as a kid, nothing like Mario Kart, toys, whatever. Those are my brother's thing. Yet, I really enjoyed it in this context. At this point, I'm just trying to explain something I can't really explain. The Superchargers were my favorite among the Skylanders, and that's just kind of that. It's still true to this day. This actually turned out to be a huge perk, because I was right at the age to start babysitting. I brought a bag full of the Superchargers and their vehicles to my first babysitting job, and that 3-year-old thought I was the coolest person on the planet. Every time I went back, he'd immediately ask if I brought the cool cars. It was so cute. It couldn't say as L's or as R, so they were cool cars. I've got lots of fun stories about kids and Skylanders that I'll be happy to tell in the future, but they don't have a whole lot to do with me getting into the fandom, so I'm going to save those stories for another time. I mentioned already watching YouTube videos, but so far I've understated how important that actually was to my Skylanders experience. This was my avenue for learning anything and everything there was to know about Skylanders. It's how I started to pick out which Skylanders to go after and what games to play, and it was overall just a lot of fun. I spent more time watching Skylander content than I actually did playing the games. And there was one SkyTuber who absolutely stood out among the rest. You know him, you love him, it was Crash the Skylands. I remember finding some of his element ranking videos and really getting into them. Crash is a great guy who brought a lot of fun energy to his videos, and that excitement was contagious. This is where I first started tipping from being a fan of the franchise to being a part of the fandom. See, when I wasn't playing Skylanders, reading about the Skylanders, or watching Skylander content, I was making Skylander art. And after seeing so much awesome content from Crash the Skylands, I did something I've never done before. I reached out to him and offered to send him some fan mail. I'll show you guys a few pictures of the things that I sent Crash back then. It was really a surreal experience getting to see someone actually open up a box of what I'd sent him. I can't really tell you what made me decide to actually go through with it. It was kind of just like, hey, I made these things, would you like them? And he accepted them, and it was really cool. Sadly, you can't actually see the original video now because of some of Crash's personal reasons. He had to take that video down, but I'm still very grateful to him because he encouraged me to be more involved in the community after that. At that point, I did kind of sort of attempt doing some YouTube videos, but they weren't really that great. But that's okay, because I found a different way to be involved that much better suited my talents at that time. I've been talking about how it's the characters more than the gameplay that had me hooked on Skylanders. But the sad thing is that each character only has a very little bit of content, and I'm the kind of person who wants to hunt down every scrap of information I can when I have a new favorite character. So that is how I accidentally discovered fanfiction. I know, naive teenage Rainstorm had no idea what fanfiction was until she stumbled across it while desperately trying to scrape up any new Stealth Elf content. You are welcome to laugh, but it is true. I didn't have a clue that fanfiction was even a thing until then, despite kind of having written fanfiction for most of my life. I would just write it in my head and in little journals without really knowing it was a bigger thing that people did on the regular. So once I figured out that fanfiction was something you could just do and post online, I got excited about writing my own stories. So I started off with a one-shot on Wolfgang, and then I did a bigger story on the Superchargers, and I made the dumb promise that I would never abandon the story. So yeah, that story it's totally abandoned. I'm not going back to that one. When I started writing, I had just no concept of the actual dedication that it takes to finish a story. I just remember being frustrated when I would read fanfictions that were unfinished, and so I was all, oh, I'm never gonna abandon this, which clearly did happen. But while I'm not going to return to the stories I left behind, I do have new stories that I want to create. I only ever put out a fraction of what I actually came up with. And while what I came up with is stuff that I would revamp now, it did lay the foundation for a lot of stories that I am excited to tell. If you guys want, it could be kind of funny to dig up those old fictions and read through them, cringe at them, all that good stuff. They are all still on fanfiction.net if you really feel like going and finding them yourself. I can promise I've got better things to write now, though. Now, like with a lot of people, my interests wax and wane. Skylanders was a franchise I got more into than most franchises, but it did phase out for a while. It was always in the back of my mind. I'd often think about it and think fondly of it, and the stories were things that I knew I wanted to return to, but life just kept moving forward and I didn't really get it back around to it for a while. It was sometime about 3 years ago now, so about a 3-year gap, I would say. And at this point, I've graduated high school, I've started college, and I'm working a regular job at a child development center. I've been in and out of a couple different fandoms as well, and I've got a lot more creative experience under my belt. I can't tell you why it happened, but one night I had a dream where I was in a store and I found a Lego Sea Shadow and Sunrunner. Why? I really don't know. I mean, a Lego Sea Shadow and Sunrunner would be awesome. I don't know why those don't exist already. But in that dream, I was just so excited to rediscover something I loved so much. And when I woke up, I realized that, man, I missed Skylanders, and I was ready to return to it. The community I returned to was a lot different from when I left, and that's just the way it goes when the main source of content for a franchise dries up. But the main source of content, the games, was never that important to me, so I didn't mind. I wanted to come back, and I wanted to come back with something to offer. So I started making art. I did a small series of drawings where I made Valentine cards that were meant to be funny because this was around February. And then I did another series where I made minis out of half the Supercharger characters. And partway through doing that, SCL Matt, of all people, took notice and retweeted it. I cannot tell you how encouraging it was to have a major member of the community take notice of what I was doing and draw attention to that. And that really gave me a boost of courage and the desire to go further and try something else. This is where I first started customizing Skylanders, the thing that a lot of you guys know me for. Technically speaking, I'd done a little bit of it before in high school, but that was really just touching up the eyes on my splat and then messing around with one of the Imaginite chests, and I don't really count that. So no, my first true attempt at a Skylander custom was none other than the Tomb Buggy. Look, guys, when Rollerball supercharges the Tomb Buggy in-game, it looks awesome, and I wanted one. It was as simple as that. So I was ordering new Skylanders to bolster my collection off of the SCL website, and I just ordered an extra Tomb Buggy, and when it arrived, I just got to work on it right away. I actually did want to attempt making a video on that, so I had some decent footage of it, but it was a bit too stressful to try to coordinate that in addition to doing a good job for my first true customization. This was a much more intense custom job because I was cutting off the wheels, completely remaking them, adding parts. It was a lot more involved and it became a bit too stressful. I was really happy with how the result turned out, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't something that made me want to dive into making hundreds of customs afterwards. But before giving up, I decided to try doing one more custom, and that experience was just completely different. I didn't attempt to do any of the videos. I did take a few pictures, but I didn't make it with the intent of doing content. And I just fell into the process and loved it. I just did, and that was where I made my first custom character, which was Dark Ink Splat, based off of some of the original concept work made for that character. When I started posting pictures of the customs I made, I received a lot of encouragement from you guys, the community, and it just inspired me to keep going with it and having fun. I sent a bunch of them to SkyTubers early on, but then some people started reaching out, asking to buy them from me, and that just kind of led from one thing to another. SCL Matt was a huge help to me early on. Besides encouraging what I was doing, he helped me by giving me ways to start selling my customs to a bigger audience. It started with just some small customs for the Mystery Box of Doom, but then later on the big Whatnot auctions, those still blow my mind of how well they did. And then ultimately, he advised me on how to set up my own shop, and that's how I just sell my customs now and probably just forever at this point. So seriously, thank you, Matt. I would not have made it this far without you. So yeah, that's the gist of how I ended up where I am in this fan base. And there's still a lot more that I want to bring to you guys in order to keep this community going strong. The customs will keep coming. I will do some videos on them, don't worry. But there is more that I can do. You've already seen a bit of that with like the custom sky stones and then the storytelling, and I finally feel like I've got the tools to start bringing a lot of other ideas to life. I hope you guys decide to stick around and see where this goes. Thank you all for dropping in and listening to this long ramble. I really appreciate it. Feel free to let me know what you want to see from me first, I guess, because goodness knows I've got a list of things that I can and want to do. So yeah, just let me know, and we'll just figure it out from there. But for now, till next time, Rainstorm.